It's Transformer time once more. But this is going to be the first live-action Transformers movie without Michael Bay. Excuse me. But considering this is written by just one single writer in Christina Hodson, and with a directorial debut from Travis Knight, wonder if he's related to me. Nah, I'm only kidding. But it'll be interesting to see what they can do with a reboot for Transformers, because this was in dire need of happening, because Bay just had to go as a director. He just did the franchise no favors whatsoever. I mean, just look at The Last Night. But in 2 hours, will this be finally more than meets the eye? See you in 2 hours. This is the spoiler review. And if you've come onto this thinking that this is the spoiler-free, I'll give you the usual customary 5 seconds to stop the video and go to the spoiler-free in the description below. Okay, we're good. Writing. Whew. As I kind of mentioned in the spoiler-free, when you have only one writer, there's a lot less distraction. And one of the biggest flaws of the Bay former era is that there's too many frat boy jokes in there that doesn't really need to be part of a series about transforming alien robots coming to Earth. I mean, have humor in there that can complement the concept, but putting in, like, I mean, especially some of the, not necessarily toilet jokes, but there's like double entendres, like in Revenge of the Fallen, where Simmons says, and I quote, "I am directly beneath the enemy's scrotum." That was not in the script, according to the writers, but then again, around the time Revenge of the Fallen was being made, the Writers Guild strike was on, and Bay decided to take a few liberties, as he so often does. But I felt like the writing with this, because you're working with a much smaller cast, in not only in terms of the human actors, but a much smaller visual effects cast, where because Bumblebee is the titular character, but it's only two primary Decepticon cast members. That allows a lot more character development, and let me just see. I felt like with just Shatter and Dropkick, you're able to allow Justin Theroux and Angela Bassett to have more screen presence, to be able to grow into the characters, rather than just be like, oh, there's that Autobot, oh, there's that Decepticon, there's that Autobot, there's that Decepticon. I felt like by the time they got to Dark of the Moon and Age of Extinction, it was almost like a case of a who's who you had to try and, pinpoint your finger on, and as such, not enough voice actors were really given enough time to work with the material and to actually grow into the characters. So, and even though Optimus Prime's role was diminished in comparison to the last 5 movies, whenever his presence is involved in the writing, it means something. It's not just like a throwaway thing or just a quick visual cameo. And obviously, Haley Steinfeld's character, Charlie Watson, has got a lot of character development as Bumblebee's sidekick, buddy, friend, amigo, call her what you will. Her character is basically a teenage grouch to begin with, but I think when you're in a situation where you weren't really prepared to say goodbye to a deceased relative, it tends to change you as a person. it varies person to person, but some people aren't ready to move on. They actually want to finish up the things that they were doing before their relative went and left. And Charlie's was to fix up the car that her father and she were working on. One thing that a lot of people had told me is that Charlie's parents are way more tolerable than that of Sam Witwicky's. For once, they are absolutely correct, because Ron and Sally Watson are nowhere near as cringeworthy as the Witwicky mother and father from Transformers 1 to 3. Oh, thank God. And here's the thing. I happen to like Kevin Dunn as an actor, but you could tell he was only doing those 3 movies for the paycheck. You could tell he really didn't want to do that. Maybe the first movie, but 2 and 3 is just like, pay me now. And although he was the least irritating parent, Sam's mother, oh sweet Lord. I was so glad when Age of Extinction came around and she was just written out of the story completely. I'm like, oh, my sanity can breathe. But, and even like Charlie's little brother, was actually quite tolerable. I mean, yeah, he had his little quirks, but he wasn't anywhere like on the scale of irritation as most stereotypical annoying siblings, whether they be younger or distinguished and what have you. So writing, it was so much more well thought out. Each character had their own little quirks and their little dynamics, and Charlie's character, her layers get peeled away slowly but surely, and you get to understand her. And it's in the sense of, and it's also in the sense of, she is there as much for Bumblebee as he is there for her. The two kind of help each other out. I did find it a little bit cliche and a little bit generic that, we have to stick with the template of, oh, he has to remain mute. Look, here's the thing. That was cute throughout the Bayformer era, to a subtle degree. But I actually want to hear Bumblebee talk. We got that a little bit with Dylan O'Brien, and I actually liked his voice as Bumblebee. I thought it actually fit the character. But no, we've got to keep it the same just for the normies. It's like, oh no, Bumblebee must be mute. They are correct that they did humanize the character with the way that Charlie interacts with him by putting her hands on his face and actually letting him feel like he's actually appreciated, he's actually wanted, and she actually considers him like either a really close friend or one of the family. But it would have been good if they could have actually just given him, even if it was limited vocalization, and she's able to repair his vocal cords somehow. That would have been a little bit more appreciated than just go, oh, let's make him mute again. Really? But other than those minor... Oh, I did find it, although this is kind of a little bit of revisionist history, the idea that the Decepticons were able to inadvertently create the internet in the 80s, it's an idea that they kind of played with the first movie in 2007, where CDs, DVDs, the internet, and television were reverse engineered through Megatron. Hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the internet was actually invented in the 1960s, and it was actually by 2 British engineers. But, you know, for the context of the story, it does work within there, but you will get people who will nitpick over this and say, well, no, that's not actually what happened. The internet had been around for 20 years by that point, but, you know, I'll make of that what you will. But other than that, the writing was solid. Aside from those minor discrepancies, the writing is solid. It's enjoyable. And, yeah, this is quite possibly a Transformers script that I can put on that have the same level of as the first Iron Man and the first Jurassic Park. Those are my thoughts with writing. Now on to casting. I officially became a fan of Hailee Steinfeld after seeing this. I think Charlie is a very endearing character. Yeah, she's a little bit rough around the edges with her personality when she first starts out. She is she's basically a tell it like it is tomboy, which I find awesome because there's not enough tomboys now. We need to see more of that. And it's just the fact that she's able to get in and get her, to muck in and get her fingers dirty and not be girly about it. I think that's, actually a very encouraging thing. Hope to see more of that in movies, by the way. And the way she interacts with Bumblebee, it's adorable. It's almost like, the way two best friends act. And this is where I'm going to be nice about the Bayformers movie. Shia's interaction with Bumblebee, that was actually one of the few redeeming aspects of his performances with those movies. And just the character in general. And I feel like there are those little nods with this one. The only difference is Hailee Steinfeld's a better actor than Shia LaBeouf. But, yeah, I mean, every other actor that was in this, Cena, I was really surprised how amusing he could be with his slightly comedic aspects at the beginning when they're playing paintball out in the forest, but the fact when he could also get serious, you could tell he was properly acting. He wasn't like a generic action star like he had done with movies like The Marine and 12 Rounds. You could tell he was putting his back into this. He was genuinely trying to make that transition over to Hollywood after being such a mainstay in WWE for the better part of 15 to 16 years. And of course, some people are going to say, yeah, well, you called The Rock out on things like this where, he said he was back and he was never leaving and this is what he loved. Well, even Cena has actually admitted he was wrong to do that. And, he's at an age now where, he's paid his dues in WWE. And he's slowly transitioning into Hollywood. He comes back over to wrestling as and when he needs to. But, there's nothing wrong with stepping out of your comfort zone and doing things to, add to your list of capabilities. I mean, The Rock was no different 17 years ago when he took some time off to film The Scorpion King, and then year after year he got more and more movie roles, and he's one of the most bankable, actors in Hollywood at the moment. Although Skyscraper, from what I understand, didn't do so well. Still a good actor, though. And, like I say, I can't really find anybody that put in a poor performance. Even Peter Cullen was putting his back into this as Optimus Prime. Whereas with the last few movies, you felt like he was doing the whole Bill Murray effect, and along with Kevin Conroy just phoning it in. It's almost like he's reading a grocery list. transform. He goes, Autobots, transform, roll out. Ratchet, I require bread, milk, butter, oil. You know, it would feel like, you know, you just really didn't care. In this movie, even with the limited amount of scenes he's got in this, he is actually giving it his all. And that is just so refreshing to see. But this is what happens when you take Bay and take him out of the director's seat and allow someone else's, you know, directorial vision actually be allowed to take center stage. And Bay has said, mind you, he'd said this on record ever since Dark and Moon. This would be his last movie. Then Age of Extinction happened, and then The Last Night happened. He said Last Night was his last movie. I think he's maybe keeping up to this now, because Bay, you know, you allowed this reboot to happen with all the other movies that had happened beforehand. Do us a favor, stay away from the director's chair for this, because I think if you get Christina Hodson and Travis Knight to come back for all future potential sequels, I think you're going to see the Transformers movie series flourish in the same context as that of the Spider-Man Raimi trilogy, and maybe even have a monumental legacy of that of the Jurassic Park franchise. Because say what we will about Jurassic Park 3, it is still part of the Jurassic Park trilogy. It still made a monumental amount of money, and the first two movies in that trilogy are still well received and well praised. The first one is still better than The Lost World, but even then, The Lost World is still better than Jurassic Park 3, and in that context, that's not saying much. But if they keep doing what they're doing with this, sign me up for Bumblebee 2 or Transformers The Rebirth. So, yeah, cast, acting, 10 out of 10. Visual effects. Folks, it's ILM. You know what you're getting. But because of the fact that they're working with a smaller cast of Autobots and Decepticons, it's a lot easier to focus more attention to detail. And to be fair, I've always thought Bumblebee was perfect, the way he was CG-wise in the first 5 movies. Here, the only thing that stayed the same with regards to his design is his face and his helmet. That seems to be the only aspects that have been kept over from the Bayformer era. The only major differences with him this time is that he's a lot smaller this time around, because in the first movie he just towered above everyone, whereas this one, because it's much more of a compact car compared to, well, if you want to call the Volkswagen Beetle a compact compared to the Camaro, they do seem to have shrunk him down a lot more this time. Whether that's just to be so that he's a lot more relatable to Charlie, I don't know. But it does allow him to be able to kneel down to her a lot more accessibly than he was able to do with Sam. And I just like these visual moments where Charlie and Bee are actually hugging each other. It's like, you know what, that's adorable. It's, you know, it's like that best friend or, you know, that favorite pet that you had. These very sort of tender moments, you know, where they're having a bonding period and they're like, you know, I'm there for you, you're there for me. And yeah, a lot of people had said over the years, oh, the G1 designs would never get over in live action. Pardon me? I saw that opening sequence on Cybertron, I'm like, more of this, please. More of this. I mean, in terms of visual aesthetics, I was like a kid in a candy store. I thought, you know, the opening fight on Cybertron, you know, why didn't they do this so many years ago? And Starscream in his G1 form, along with Optimus. I mean, please, more of this. But yeah, you know, this is ILM. This is, you know, the same group of people that gave us Back to the Future, that has given us every single Jurassic Park movie, that did the first Iron Man, that did the first Avengers movie. And, you know, they know what they're doing. So, special and visual effects, again, folks, 10 out of 10. I can't really say enough. As for the score and soundtrack, oh, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but more of this, please. You know, Dario Marianelli? Amazing score, and the soundtrack, particularly when you have the Smiths, Simple Minds. I can't believe they shoved Rick Astley into this once more, but even Bumblebee kind of gave his thoughts, but that's like, no, eject this. It's an 80s soundtrack, so it's going to be amazing by default. Oh, yes. If I can find the soundtrack for this on CD release, I'm so pre-ordering this because, you know, it's an 80s soundtrack, folks. It's awesome. So it really helps with the story, and yeah, I can't say enough about it. You know, that was soundtrack and the score are masterfully done. And for my final thoughts for this movie, this is the greatest live-action Transformers movie ever. This is how the first movie should have been done 11 years ago. You know, the writing is solid, everybody turns in a fantastic performance, especially Haley Steinfeld as Charlie Watson. A very, very likable protagonist, in a very similar vein to that of Marky Mark from Age of Extinction onwards. Unlike Shia LaBeouf, but he's Shia LaBeouf. He was pretty much unlikable after Revenge of the Fallen. And, you know, there's no cringeworthy dad humor, nor ridiculous sex jokes that really shouldn't have any place in a franchise like this. Michael Bay, you know what you did. And everything just works so cohesively, from writing, casting, visual effects, to special effects, to the score, to the general payoff. My only major requirement, as and when they go to do a sequel for the next movie, you get Haley Steinfeld to reprise her role as Charlie Watson. We want to see Charlie make another appearance, because this character was so likable. You know, you could tell that you couldn't really tell if you were seeing the actress or the character having fun, because the emotion that Haley was displaying as Charlie, it even looked like she was having fun whilst making the movie. And that's actually a very redeemable, got there eventually, quality for character and actor, where the two go hand in hand and they match in the same instance. More of this, please. No more involvement from Michael Bay, only as producer. You stay out of that director's chair, sir. You know why you need to stay out of that director's chair. You cannot. You're a good visual director, but, you know, it's like with Zack Snyder trying to do superhero movies. Stop. So, it's a perfect Transformers movie, finally. And, yeah, even Peter Cullen was giving it his all as Optimus Prime. Where pretty much he'd been doing the whole phoning it in motif for the last few movies. This one, he actually cared. And that says a lot. But yeah, like I say, my only requirement for the next movie, get Haley Steinfeld to reprise her role. Because we want to see Charlie again. Charlie's a very likable character. In short, folks, if you haven't seen Bumblebee, do go see it, because it will wash the awful taste of The Last Knight out of your mouth. This is MJ Knight signing off from Real Features, giving Bumblebee a perfect must.